Ladies and gentlemen, before we start the program, could we please pause for a moment of silence for those that we lost and who were injured and their families this past weekend at the State Fair? Thank you. Before I introduce Mr. Cain, I'd like to thank a few people. I'd like to thank Sharon Day, our Republican National Vice Chair, who's come all the way from Florida. Sharon, there she is. I'd like to thank the Columbia Club, and most specifically, they called just a couple days ago. Thanks for making sure that we were accommodated. And most importantly, thank you. Thank you for being here this evening, especially all the new faces. You know, in 2010, in Indiana, Republicans made huge gains in the State House. So big were those gains that it sent the State House Democrats packing to Illinois for 5 weeks, if you recall. And in 2012, with your help, we're going to send President Barack Obama back to Illinois for a permanent retirement. I don't think I have to tell you, Barack Obama has been a triple F president. He's failed to improve the tone in Washington since he took the oath of office. He failed to improve on the jobs front. Unemployment is worse since he was sworn in. And he's failed to reduce the debt and the deficit as he promised since he was sworn in. It's worse now. In fact, it's at a nation-threatening level. It's no wonder that Gallup just released a poll showing that he enjoys a 39% approval rating from the American public. The bottom line is he has made it worse. And now he's riding around the country on a taxpayer-funded bus tour. But folks, you know, the road to the White House goes to the heartland, and it goes straight through Indiana. Even the pundits are now saying our nomination process will go through June. And you know what that means here in this room. It means Indiana's going to be a special place in May, far beyond the Indianapolis 500. Are you ready to make Barack Obama one and done? Then give our famous Hoosier welcome that even the White House can hear to a straight-talking, problem-solving guy that's had real executive leadership experience and a Purdue graduate to boot. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Herman Cain.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Man, love it. I am thrilled to be here. But Indiana is no stranger to me because, as Eric said, I'm a Boilermaker. But the other thing that we have, did he say, I who? When your candidate gets here, he can say, I you. You all know it's a friendly rivalry. Yep, it's a friendly rivalry. But the other thing that we have in common is that we are all patriots because we care about the future of this country. Patriots. This nation has become a nation of crises. And it's getting worse. We have an economic crisis. We have an entitlement spending crisis. We have an energy crisis. We have an immigration crisis. We have a moral crisis. And we have a severe deficiency of leadership crisis in this country. Now, here's what I would do about each one of those crises. I call it common sense. I know common sense left Washington, D.C. a long time ago, but I'm going to take it back to Washington, D.C. so we can fix this mess. My economic growth plan. We ought to be talking about economic growth every day, every interview, but yet you still have some who want to focus on stuff that's not relevant to what I call the co-critical issues. Economics, energy, national security. My economic vision I released a little over a month ago, phase 1 and phase 2. This administration does not understand that the engine of economic growth is the business sector. And if you don't put fuel in the engine, it's going nowhere. Here's what we need to do. Lower the top corporate and personal tax rate to a maximum of 25%, zero tax on repatriated profits, and take the capital gains tax rates to zero and make all of those permanent. Permanent. One of the things that's killing this economy is uncertainty. The business community has been saying this for months, for 2.5 years. They're not going to invest their hard-earned cash, not knowing when the next time interest rates are going to be stable, when the next time we're going to have tax rates. They only extended them until the end of 2012, or whether or not a regulatory agency under this administration is going to try to intimidate a company into going to the state that they want you to go to, like they tried to do to Boeing. Boeing wanted to go to South Carolina. This administration tried to use the National Labor Relations Board to intimidate them into going where they wanted them to go. That's not how the free market system works in America. That's meddling. So we need some certainty relative to tax rates. Capital gains is just a wall between people with money and people with ideas. Where do most of the jobs come from? New businesses and small businesses. And we got this big wall here. We have nearly $3 trillion that have been generated in profits offshore. $3 trillion. Now, taking it to zero, my dad would call that a no-brainer. With those profits being subject to double taxation, most companies leave those profits over there and grow their businesses in those countries. So my dad's thinking is, since it's going to stay over there, don't tax it, and it'll come back home. Now, the liberals like to say, well, how do you know that they're going to take those profits and invest them here in the United States? My answer is, you don't know, but let me point out a breaking news announcement. It's their money. It's none of your business what they do with those profits. It's their money. But let me tell you what most smart business people will do. They will invest where they can get the best return on their investment. That's what they will do with those profits. I served on the board of directors for several corporations in the last 20 years. I served on the board of a $4 billion company, $8 billion company, an $18 billion company, my own board of directors for my small subchapter S corporation. Let me tell you the conversation that we never had in 20 years in any of these board meetings. What is our strategy to stand still and not grow? That doesn't happen. Growth is what this nation needs. And if you were to get those barriers out of the way of the business sector, they would do what they do best, which is to create jobs. Now, one of the other disappointing things that I heard just a week or so ago was that the Federal Reserve has announced that they're going to leave the federal funds rate, 0.25, at the same rate until sometimes mid-2013. First of all, that's a political move. Secondly, it's the administration and the Federal Reserve admitting that they are waving the white flag on growth in this economy. They are surrendering. The American people don't want to surrender on this economy. They want results. That's what they want. Surrender. And so I have some bad news and some good news for you. The bad news is we're not going to get any economic growth in the next year and a half. The good news is when you elect me president, you will. I'm just saying. I can hear my staff saying, he took his jacket off. He's just getting warmed up. That's right. Now, phase two, the reason I'm spending more time on the economic growth plan is because that's our biggest issue next to foreign policy. Phase two, that's going to, now this first set of ideas that I just laid out, I'm going to ask Congress to send me that legislation within the first 90 days of my administration. And then get it passed within the first 90 days. We need an immediate boost to this economy. We don't need any more excuses. We don't need any more blame game. We need some things that are going to move this economy. Now, the liberals will be quick to say, well, how are you going to pay for it? It pays for itself. The liberals have lied to the American public for decades about how tax rates work. All you have to do is look at the history of the 60s when John F. Kennedy was able to make some major changes. All you have to do is look at when Ronald Reagan was president, and he was able to get some major tax changes put in. And that way we had 2 of the decades of the greatest increase in tax revenue that we've had in the last 70 years. It works if you do it the right way. It's not going to work the right way if you just take a little bitty teeny weeny amount and say, well, we lowered taxes and nothing happened. No. You have to do it the right way in order for it to have an impact. Phase 2 of my economic growth plan is to totally replace the tax code with the fair tax, which is the national sales tax. Fair tax. The current tax code mess has been around since 1913. And all it has done is it has grown into this monstrosity where the politicians and the bureaucrats try to pick winners and losers. They use it to manipulate segments of the economy. They use it to manipulate different people. They use it to try and spur class warfare with the tax code. It needs to be totally replaced with the fair tax. Now, when I put this idea on the table and I'm inside the Beltway, I don't get the reaction that I got from you all. You're probably not surprised. I've never seen so much skepticism before in my life. So I had a reporter stand up and say, well, Mr. Cain, that all sounds well and good. I said, well, thank you. He said, but you can't get that done. I said, what do you mean I can't get it done? Phase 1 or phase 2? He said, you can't get either one of those done. Why? Well, you don't know how Washington works. Yes, I do. It doesn't. Why do I want to learn how it does not work? And here's one of my guiding principles. When the people understand it, they will support it and demand it. It was former Senator, Eric Dirksen, former Senator Eric Dirksen. He popularized the statement, when they feel the heat, they will see the light. Now, here's how this will work. My job is to get Congress to draft the legislation and get it on my desk. I believe that we can do that. But then if they get stubborn and obstinate, you're going to understand it, and you're going to be the heat. We're going to melt the phone lines, melt the emails, melt standing outside the halls of Congress. The people will be the heat because the people are still in charge of this country, not the politicians and the bureaucrats. So you all are going to have to stay active and help me get elected, and you're going to have to stay involved after I get elected, because you know some of them are going to fall into business as usual once they get to D.C. and drink the water. I'm not drinking the D.C. water. The Kool-Aid or the water, I'm not drinking it. I'm going to have my own water to come in so they don't trick me and put something fancy in the water and I start talking like them. We need comprehensive immigration reform. That's Washington speak for they don't know what to do. If I start sounding like that, my chief of staff has already promised me he's going to slap me back into my senses. Here's what we need to do on immigration. First, let me say, my approach to problem solving, my approach to getting stuff done is just like every successful business person. You might use different words. It starts with working on the right problem, surrounding yourself with the right people, and putting together the right plans. If you're working on the right problem and you got good people around you and you put together the right plans, then you execute and you get things done. The reason nothing has been done on immigration is because they haven't identified the right problem. It's not one, it's four. We got to work on all four problems at the same time. Number one, secure the border for real. For real. Number two, promote the path to citizenship that's already here. We don't need a new path to citizenship. We already have one. Now, we do need to clean up the bureaucracy and the bureaucrats that are making it cumbersome. Number three, we clean up the bureaucracy such that the process works. Number three, enforce the laws that are already on the books relative to immigration. Enforce the laws. Isn't that common sense? Yes. And number four, what do you do about the illegals that are already here? Empower the states to decide what they want to do to enforce the laws, because the federal government won't do it. The federal government can't do it. They cannot micromanage that problem. I wouldn't have sent Arizona a lawsuit. I would have sent them a medal for trying to basically protect themselves. Let the states do it. The economy. And so that's phase one and phase two. And then on Thursday in South Carolina, I'm going to be announcing phase three of my economic growth plan. Why does it have three phases? This economy is messed up. There's not one simple solution that's going to fix all this stuff. We got the immigration issue, entitlement spending crisis. We're not going to fix the entitlement spending crisis by trimming around the edges. When you hear someone say, well, how do you feel about means testing? You're not working on the right problem. How do you feel about raising the retirement age? You're not working on the right problem. Well, how do you feel about cutting benefits? No, don't cut benefits. I don't like that at all. But here's the thing. We must restructure programs. In order for us to go from this entitlement mindset in this country, a lot of people, not y'all, but a lot of people have this entitlement mindset, okay? We got to go from entitlement to empowerment. And that means restructure these programs that will help people if they help themselves. What a novel idea. We don't need programs that help people stay on the program. We need programs that help people to get off the program. And I know the next statement is going to rub some people the wrong way, and somebody's going to say you're being politically incorrect and politically insensitive, but you should not be paid by the federal government if you decide to just keep on having babies because it increases the size of your check. What are you going to do to help yourself? My mom and my dad weren't looking for help from the government. They both walked off of farms at the age of 18, literally with the clothes on their back. They walked off different farms. But they hooked up in Mansfield, Ohio, got married, ended up living in Atlanta, Georgia. And moving to Atlanta, Georgia, my brother and I, they raised us in what my brother and I called a half a house. A 6-room house with 3 rooms on one side, 3 rooms on the other side. With the wall going down the middle. My brother and I used to call it a half a house. We said, Dad, why do we live in a half a house? Dad said, it's a duplex. But Dad, we only live in half of it. It's a duplex. They didn't argue with Dad because Dad was working 3 jobs. He was a barber, a janitor, and a chauffeur. He used one to put food on the table, the second one to put a roof over our head, and that third one to save for his American dream, which was to one day buy a whole house, and he did it the old-fashioned way. He worked for it. I'll never forget the day when Dad came home on a Saturday and told my mother and brother and I, get in the car. We got in the car. You don't argue with Dad. Man with 3 jobs is usually not home on Saturdays anyway. But Dad was home on a Saturday, and we going, this is different. He said, get in the car. We got in the car. 35 minutes later, going west on Bankhead Highway, Dad pulled up on a little street called Albert Street. Stopped in front of the 3rd house on the right. Little brick house. Not attached to any other house. With grass growing around it. Dad announced to my brother and my mother and I, this is our new home. We said, what? We jumped out of the car, ran up to the front door of this house. The door was locked. Dad walked up very proudly, took the key out of his pocket, put it in the front door, don't you know, went inside, announced to the family, it's got 2 bedrooms. One for you boys, one for your mom and me. And I'm going to buy y'all twin beds. We thought we had died and gone to heaven. Twin beds. Bishop Russell, we thought heaven had come down on earth. Dad's going to buy us twin beds. Because living in that duplex, my brother and I slept on a cot in the kitchen, and every evening we'd argue over who's supposed to let it out, and every morning we argue over who's supposed to take it up. Now we're going to have twin beds in our own room. My mother was in tears of joy. She didn't know Dad had saved enough money to buy that house. She didn't even know that Dad had gone out and bought the house. Don't try that today, men. Not a good idea. You'll be living in that sucker with Rover the dog. Honey, I have a surprise for you. A brand new house you have never seen. Oh, no, you didn't. When they put their hands on their hips and that neck starts moving, man, you in a heap of trouble. But Dad could get away with that. That was his American dream. And he was able to do so because he didn't have as many governmental, legislative, and tax barriers in his way the way we have today. We have become a nation of crises. Leadership is the biggest thing that we need. When I was growing up as a little boy, I never thought that I would be running for president of the United States of America. Growing up in a very humble household, My dream was to one day make me some money. When you grow up broke, your dream is to make some money. I've done okay, real comfortable, but I'm not a cajillionaire. But about 12 years ago, my first grandchild was born. And when I looked into that little face for the very first time, the first thought that went through my mind wasn't, what do I need to do to make sure she gets a good education? Or what do I need to do to make sure she gets a good start in life? Like my parents wanted me to get a good start in life, you want your kids to get a start in life? The first thought that went through my mind, so help me God, what do I do to make this a better nation and a better world? 12 years ago, I didn't know the answer. 2.5 years ago, I didn't know the answer. Before Barack Obama took office, I was happily doing my radio show 5 nights a week, 3 hours a night, enjoying it. I never thought I was going to end up in radio, but I did. It forced me to pay closer attention to what was going on. But then after President Obama took office, hired 36 plus czars, started spending like there was no tomorrow, cutting the shuttle program, shutting down the missile defense project that had started in Turkey. I and you witnessed the weakening of America, and I could not stand it. And I happen to believe that there are 2 plans in life. There's your plan, and then there's God's plan. God doesn't always tell you what his plan is for you all at once because we couldn't handle it. But I had prayed and worked, and God allowed me to achieve my American dream, and I did, and then some. And then God said, now you got to work on my plan. I said, well, Lord, I want to go into cruise control and play golf 3 times a week. That's, yeah. Touche. He's in cruise control, playing a lot of golf when America is in trouble. And so that first grandchild, then the second one, and then the third one made me realize that I needed to do more to help change this country. And then there was another life-changing experience that made me realize that I needed to do something with my time, my talents, and my abilities. We all have that responsibility. And that was in 2006 when I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I had cancer in my colon. I had cancer in my liver. And I had a 30% chance of survival. They had to remove 30% of my colon, 70% of my liver. Then I had to take some more chemotherapy. And when my doctor informed me that he was going to take out 70% of my liver, I said, Doc, I never heard of that. Can you live off of a sliver of liver? He said, yes. Why? He said, it grows back. I missed that in 10th grade biology. I didn't know that. 2 weeks ago, I went into my oncologist for my annual CAT scan, X-ray, colonoscopy, blood work. I have been totally cancer-free for 5 years, no sign of cancer in my body. I announced that when I was on Dia Cavuto one afternoon on Fox News. And so I'd just come from the doctor and got my letter. I was so happy and proud. I held it up and said, Neil, I got some breaking news for you. I said, I just got my 5-year write-up from my doctor that says that there's absolutely no trace of cancer in my body. I've been totally cancer-free for 5 years. He said, God just didn't want to deal with you yet. Maybe he didn't. But I happen to believe that he wanted me to deal with the problems of this nation, which is why I prayed about it. I thought about it. I prayed about it. I thought about it. I prayed about it. I thought about it. I listened to a lot of people, but you got to know who to listen to. First, I listened to the Holy Spirit. I'm a man of faith, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it, the fact that I'm a man of faith. I'm not going to hide it. And finally came to a decision that this is what I am supposed to do at this time in my life, at this time in this country. When I told my wife of 43 years that I was thinking about running for president, she said, of what? She did. The United States of America. She didn't speak to me for a week. She didn't speak to me for a week. And when she finally started talking about, she talked to me about other stuff, but she did not want to talk about that issue. So one Saturday morning, having coffee, happened to be home, and we'd finished breakfast and sitting and having a cup of coffee. She finally brought it up. She said, you're going to do that, aren't you? I said, what? Run for president? Yes. I said, sweetheart, what's your biggest fear? Without hesitating, she said, my biggest fear is that you will win. I said, well, that's a compliment. Why do you feel that way? She said, I've been with you for 43 years. I've been listening to some of these news reports speculating about you running for president. And the biggest mistake that they made was to say that Herman Cain can't win. They should never tell Herman Cain he can't do anything. Never. They messed up. They messed up. And so let me put the Iowa straw poll in perspective. Look, I could talk about policy issues all day long, okay? But if you look in that little common sense booklet, we've got stuff on the website. My approach is the same. Are we working on the right problem? Have I surrounded myself with the right people? Are we putting together the right plans? That's what we have to do in order to get this nation back on track. Now, you've got two kinds of coverage going on in the media. They've now decided that, 3 candidates are what they call top tier, so they're ignoring the rest of us. But let me tell you why that doesn't bother us. See, I came in 5th in the Iowa straw poll, and keep in mind, it is not a predictor necessarily of who wins the nomination. It is an indicator of how many of your supporters you were able to get to Iowa in order to vote in the Iowa straw poll. Representative Michelle Bachmann, they had 40 buses that they were bringing people in from all over the state. Ron Paul, I don't know how many he had. He probably had 1,000. I just never know what he's up to. We had 4 buses versus 40. Tim Pawlenty spent $1 million on radio and TV. Representative Bachmann spent at least $2 million on radio and TV because we were doing our bus tour that week. And every time I look up, there was another commercial. So they spent $1 million, a couple of $1 million. You know what we spent on radio and TV? Zero. Zero. The people were the ones who turned out for the Herman Cain campaign. And at the end of the first filing period, we were the only campaign to file no debt. No debt. We are running this like a startup business. I know it's a novel idea, but we make sure that the donations stay ahead of the spending. What a novel idea. Spend what we have. Guess what? Because of the power of the internet and because of this citizens' Tea Party movement that's going on across this country, that's what gives Herman Cain the opportunity to be your next president, not the politicians, not how much money you're going to raise. Now, we do need some money. Don't think that we don't, but we are going to be competitive. So my point is, when you come in filth and you didn't spend the millions the way the others spent, we feel pretty good about that. Because I have been going out in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, Texas, Arizona, a lot of other states. And then we figured out, before the political analysts figured out, that this nomination is going to go all the way to June. And that's when we said, let's go to Indiana. Y'all going to be in play. Y'all will be in play. So we wanted to come so you could hear my message directly, not filtered through the media, because a lot of times, not the ones that are here, you all are my friends. I like y'all. It's those that go on the internet and find some obscure quote from 6 months ago, and they want to turn that into a big story, but that doesn't bother me. I like to take my message directly to the people. What I'm saying, folks, is the naysayers are dead wrong. The naysayers are dead wrong when they say that Herman Cain cannot win the nomination and that Herman Cain cannot win the presidency. They're wrong for one real simple reason. The American people, this sleeping giant, they have awakened, and they are not going back to sleep. You know that 39% approval rating that the president is now down to? Well, now don't celebrate, because that means that today, 39% of the people are clueless, and they're going to vote for him anyway. When it goes back up to 45, you got 45% of the folks that are clueless. We are up against the clueless and the liberals. This is why, as Emeril Lagasse says, we've all got to kick it up a notch. You got to kick it up a notch in terms of what you do, not what somebody else does, what you do. And I always get asked sometimes, well, what distinguishes you from all of the other candidates? And I say, well, I am not a politician. I'm running against 9 politicians. I have never held public office. That's what distinguishes me. And my message of common sense solutions is resonating with people. My message of problem solving is resonating with people on all of the issues. We are putting solutions on the table, not more rhetoric. America is ready for results. They're sick and tired of the blame game. America wants somebody who would take the responsibility of being president of the United States of America, not trying to shift that responsibility. And as president of the United States of America, you will never ever hear me go on a world apology tour, because we are an exceptional nation and we can keep it that way. The founding fathers got it right. The founding fathers got it right when they said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator. They recognized that there was a God with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They got it right. We don't need to rewrite or ignore the Declaration. We don't need to rewrite the Constitution. We simply need to enforce the Constitution of the United States of America. And so my challenge to you, before I take some questions, make sure there's some good ones, because I'm only going to take a few. My challenge to you, what are you going to do? We have to be the defending fathers. And the way we defend that American dream for our children and our grandchildren. We have to get fellow conservatives off the sofa and to the ballot box. We have to become the educators for those that consider themselves moderates and independents. But we got to do it with the right message. We got to do it with the right messenger. Because I happen to believe that we can take this nation back. But if we don't do it in 2012, it could be too late. Because this president has demonstrated in 2.5 years that his motto isn't hope and change. Their motto is stop us if you can. Whether they're doing it through the back door, through regulatory agencies, or whether they are just flat out breaking the law. Some of us tried to say that the mandate, the health care mandate, was unconstitutional. And last Friday, an appeals court agreed with us that it is unconstitutional. But if the state of Florida and other states had not stepped up to the plate and exercised their rights to go through the court system, we wouldn't have been able to slow this train down, and we wouldn't have been able to have an opportunity to throw out the mandate. So let me tell you something. If that holds up in the Supreme Court, and I'm optimistic that it will, Obamacare becomes unraveled, and it'll be an easier job for me to repeal Obamacare because it won't be what it is today. Repeal it, not replace it, or not try to fix it. There's a better way to do it. And so that's my story. My name is HermanCain.com, and I'm running for President of the United States of America.